Now that we have a very thorough understanding of how to approach neutral in both field phase and duel phase, let's talk about how to damage an opponent once you get in range to attack them. Remember that there are two ways to win a round in Pokken. Either deplete the opponent's HP to 0, or have a higher percentage of HP remaining when the timer reaches 0. This chapter will focus on the former, but if you're looking for defensive strategies and don't mind timing an opponent out, check out chapter 10. So in this chapter, let's go over the ways to deal damage, the basic mix-up in Pokken, and how to exploit blocking opponents. You can deal damage in 3 ways. Making contact with an attack when your opponent isn't blocking, as long as they don't have invincibility frames or they're not in blue armor. Grabbing an opponent, or chip damage, which is having your opponent block certain attacks that still do a little damage. It's important to note that chip damage cannot KO an opponent. Now there is kind of a 4th way, but we're going to get into that at the end. None of these ways are inherently better than the others, and if you're predictable, opponents can take advantage of whichever method you choose to try to damage them. If you want to damage your opponent, your offense should be based around your opponent's defense, meaning during neutral, you'll want to pick up on when your opponent likes to block and when they like to use counterattacks, since those are the 2 main ways they'll avoid your normal attacks. Once you recognize these patterns, that's when you can go for a throw, since grabs beat blocking and they critical hit blue armor. If you want to hit red armor, well, I've already made a video going all the ways to deal with red armor, so check that out if you haven't. Really good tips in there. Your basic mix-up in Pokken, or the guessing situation that you force your opponent into to avoid taking damage, is usually going to be grab or don't grab. In fact, that's the only real mix-up. There's no cross-ups, no overheads, and few unblockables. When your opponent is knocked down, they'll have to guess if you go for a grab or not. If they try to break the grab preemptively, since you can't react to them, then they'll get a critical hit if you do go for the grab. But if you didn't and went for an attack, counter, or something else instead, the opponent is vulnerable to get hit because they're at frame disadvantage. Actually, let's talk about that. In order for your offense to truly be consistent and effective, you have to work to stay at frame advantage, or at least stay in a range where being at frame disadvantage doesn't end your offense. If you're trying to fish too hard for damage in neutral, or trying to retaliate with normal attacks when you're at frame disadvantage, your opponent's own attacks will be active before yours, and you're a lot more likely to just get hit than to do any damage. Instead, while in neutral, your job as the offensive player is to get into throw range to make opponents act preemptively and with buttons or jump so you can punish them. That's why walking and blocking and pushing opponents to the wall is useful. It gives them nowhere to run from your grabs, so it makes them panic and throw out moves under pressure. Grabs beat blocking opponents. But if you've played any matches at all, you'll know grabs are a huge risk and can lose you half of your HP or more if your opponent crushes your grab. Fortunately, there are 2 other ways to deal with shields: chip damage and shield breaks. Most Pokemon moves and some other attacks do a small amount of damage when your opponent blocks them. This doesn't really amount to much usually, but every bit of chip damage can put you in the life lead, and as long as you have that life lead when the timer runs out, you win. Chip damage is most noticeable for zoners or projectile heavy characters. Darkrai, for example, can base its entire game plan around never actually getting close up and into mix-up range, and just racking up chip damage with projectiles and long-reaching attacks. Shield breaking is that 4th way I talked about in how to land damage. Breaking a shield in field phase just leads to a phase shift with frame advantage on the opponent's block. But in duel phase, shield breaking gives you frame advantage as if your opponent got hit, so you can still combo afterwards. Some characters are really good at breaking shields like Blaziken and Braixen, while supports like Dragonite can help you get the opponent's shield into breaking range. I don't know all the shield values off the top of my head, but if I can get a hold of the list, I'll go ahead and link it. But just like PSP, or phase shift points, as long as you can remember which combinations of attack break shields on different characters, you'll be alright. And that's it for basic offense in Pokken. We went over different ways to land damage, the basic mix-up in the game, and how to exploit blocking opponents. See you next chapter for basic defense. If you found this guide valuable and want more, I have all the episodes of Pokken Basics already uploaded to my website. Check it out, you can get the Pokken Basics course for free. Thanks for watching, see you soon.